You're listening to the podcast for all of the news, notes, and breakdowns for your Ohio State Buckeyes. This is Sons of the Shoe with Nick Wilson and Spencer German.
It is Sons of the Shoe, Spencer German with you as another episode gets rolling right along. No Nick Wilson yet again to start this week, but I am giddy with excitement about him gracing us with his presence, hopefully for Friday's episode this week. So it should be a good week. It should be an eventful week. And guys, Ohio State fans out there, anybody listening to this show, we have the first video footage of Will Howard, of Julian Sayin, of Devin Brown or Lincoln Kienholz, if you're into that kind of thing, and of course, Aaron Nolan working out at practice, taking snaps, dropping back, faking handoffs, all that good stuff down in Columbus, I should say. It is happening. We are getting closer to spring ball. We are getting closer to the spring game. That is a sight for sore eyes during the long haul of this college football offseason, the football offseason in general. So it was good to see that. And I will be starting there because there's a lot of different commentary that's come out this week from guys like Devin Brown and others that I want to get into and discuss with you guys. I do want to remind you, though, first, that this is a new podcast, new-ish as of September. So we encourage you to like, follow, subscribe if you're on the 92.3 The Fan YouTube channel. We appreciate you commenting as well. This should be a show that, in theory, gets Michigan fans especially riled up, because in the final segment, I'm going to start the conversation that I actually really want to have with Nick when he gets back about whether or not J.J. McCarthy is worth a first-round pick. But I'm teasing it. I'm not giving away the store just yet. You're going to have to wait till the final segment when we do the Michigan Panic Meter, and we'll give you that one later on in the show. But we appreciate you guys jumping on in. Again, Sons of the Shoe. Like, follow, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, especially Apple Podcasts. But Spotify's fine. Odyssey app, of course, always a good choice. However you listen to your podcast, we appreciate you listening to us. So as camp opens up and as Ohio State starts doing football things that look like football on the videos that I'm seeing pop up all over social media, yes, it's a positive thing, and it's a good thing, and we like to see it. But the bigger conversation that I want to have amidst the quarterback position that I find fascinating is the fact that this room is essentially 5 deep right now with the guys that I rattled off at the start of the show. Devin Brown, Lincoln Kienholz, Will Howard, who came in he of course, is your transfer from this offseason. You got Aaron Nolan, and you got Julian Sayin, who's the transfer from he technically didn't never enroll at Alabama. He was in this year's class, and he chose to decommit and come to Ohio State instead. But that is the group. Both Sayin and Nolan are the two highly touted prospects that are supposed to be like the next big thing in college football, take the reins at some point. And Will Howard, of course, is the guy who kind of seems to be the leader in the clubhouse because he's a veteran. He's going into his 5th year. He's seen some things. He's played at Kansas State and obviously has the best resume of any of these guys to this point at the college level. So he's supposed to be the leader in the clubhouse. But that kind of leaves Lincoln Kienholz and Devin Brown on the outside looking in, if you will. It leaves them sort of as these kind of forgotten pieces deeper in the back end of the depth chart that I don't know we're going to get to see much of this season. And you just wonder what that means for their futures. Now, there's a lot of Ohio State fans who maybe just don't care. I've seen a lot of comments about that, like, enjoy the bench. And I don't know if that's fair to do to a college kid and tell them. And I understand people are going to push back and say, well, they're getting paid. They're professionals now, whatever. But at the end of the day, like, these guys are still 20, 21, 22. All of us at that age didn't really know how to handle these types of situations and process things. And that doesn't mean that anything bad has been said. I actually think Lincoln and Devin Brown, based on what we're hearing, based on what came out this week, have both been handling this very, very maturely. You had Devin Brown and Lincoln both saying this week that they're driven to contend for the Ohio State quarterback job, and they're not just going to like rest on their laurels and be like, accept that they aren't going to get it. There's an exact quote this came from 11 Warriors, who posted this graphic that I'm going to read off of here. But there's an exact quote from Devin Brown specifically who said, I've said it through and through. I'm a Buckeye and I'm here to compete no matter what. Honestly, I think people are cowards. I think people have this thought in their own heads that I'm going to leave and I'm a quitter, but that's never been me. These people live wherever in their mom's basement saying stuff about me, and they don't know shit. Excuse my language, but they don't know anything. They don't know who I am. They don't know where I've been. And that's always, they don't know who I've been. And that's always who I've been. I applaud Devin Brown for wanting to take the high road here. And I applaud both him and Lincoln Kienholz for kind of accepting that accepting the challenge, because listen, there's a lot of kids, especially in the NIL era, who would see what Ohio State did this offseason, see that they brought in Will Howard and tried to kind of add a veteran to that room that was going to likely be the starter on top of the recruits you got coming in behind them. And they would just say, I'm not putting up with this. I'm going to go somewhere else where I can start. In a lot of ways, that's basically what Kyle McCord did. Kyle McCord started last year, did fine. We know that Ohio State, as all of us witnessed in real time, should be better at that position, and they weren't going to guarantee him anything. So he opted for, let's go get an NIL deal from Syracuse. Let's go somewhere where I can start. I'm out of here. And he dips and he leaves. I think that kind of, and I don't want this to become a Devin Brown versus Kyle McCord thing, but I do think that speaks to the character of Devin Brown, that he is not made of that ilk. He is not going to back down from the challenge that's kind of put in front of him. He's got 5 quarterbacks in this room with him, 3 of whom are maybe more likely to start than him, because 2 of them are seen as maybe future starters for this team, and one of them the likely start of this upcoming season because of just his veteran prowess and what he brings to the table, and the fact that he was a transfer portal guy who I'm imagining gave some sort of solid NIL agreement to. But him to not back down from that challenge, him to take it head on and be willing to sort of persevere through and not just run and hide and go somewhere else. I think that deserves to be applauded. That deserves to be commended by all of us as Ohio State fans. And I don't think that the response should be, well, just enjoy the bench. If he wants to go fight for the job, more power to him. And truly, like, that is what the Ohio State program is kind of built on, is this idea that nothing's going to be just given to you. You do have to earn it, because we have some really, really talented players constantly coming through those halls, constantly coming through the Woody, constantly coming through the shoe. So it's important that, like, guys, and multiple guys have said this, like, the reason they chose OSU is because of the developmental piece. And yeah, the NIL is part of it, but they also want to be basically built into NFL caliber players and have a chance to compete for these national championships, play at the highest level of college football there is. And that stuff matters on top of the NIL stuff. So yeah, Ohio State's not going to get the guys who just flat out, I'm just doing it for NIL necessarily, but they're going to get the guys who are willing to work and are like, well, yeah, what can you do for me financially? And I think that's sort of that is the direction this sport has gone. And it's kind of the thought process that these players should have. I would hope that a lot of these guys want to do exactly what I said, which is go get developed somewhere while also being able to make money off their name, image, and likeness. That's kind of the thought process that I would imagine should be at the forefront of a lot of these guys' minds. I know that's not everybody's priority, but I would think that, but the guys going to Ohio State, it seems like, continue to say that was their priority. And so that's important. And I think that's why that's important to Devin Brown. And so, yeah, there's an element of that speaks to the state of the program, which we will circle back to here momentarily. But I also just think if Devin Brown were to, because here's the thing, I'm already picturing how this is going to go. At some point in the next year, I'm guessing Devin Brown probably will transfer, because I'm not envisioning he's going to get the starting job. I'm envisioning it's going to end up being Will Howard. He came here for a reason. And when he loses that starting job, yeah, he might be like the primary backup, because you're going to try to prolong Sayin and Nolan from playing too much this season and not exhaust their redshirt year and all these different things. So I'm imagining that him and Kienholz might be the next 2 guys kind of up there. But I don't necessarily know how much playing time they're going to get. And because of that, I think he's going to ultimately decide next year, I don't know, man. Or he'll maybe go into it saying, like, I think I'm going to compete. And then as spring kind of plays out, maybe he decides, you know what, this ain't for me. I'm starting to realize I'm not going to get the job, so I'm going to transfer. I just, this is the way I'm kind of envisioning it going. So I think at some point, Devin Brown's going to kind of follow and honestly, no Ohio State fan should fault him for that if that's what he ends up coming to. I can applaud him this year for wanting to duke it out, wanting to fight it out, wanting to try to earn the job himself. Very commendable, like I said. But if he, a year from now, tells everybody, yeah, I just want to go somewhere where I have a better chance to start and there's just so much talent here, I don't know if that's going to be here. I don't want to see people turn around and then ripping the guy for that, even though he said he wants to compete and all these different things. Because at some point, like, yeah, he does want to compete, but he also has to think about what can put him in the best position if he can make it to the NFL or he can put something on tape to try to pursue that lifelong goal that I'm sure he's had of going pro. He's got to think about that for himself and put himself first at some point. And so, again, he's here this year. He's competing through the spring. We'll see what it all looks like in about a month from now, a little over a month from now at the spring game in April. But in the meantime, I do think that I do think that if he ends up deciding a year from now that he's going to go look elsewhere and that's going to be the route he takes, nobody can blame him for that. And honestly, I think when push comes to shove, and it helps when you win, but like, for example, Joe Burrow. Everybody loved Joe Burrow when he was here. Maybe didn't know a ton about him at the time, other than the fact that he couldn't beat out the guys that have in front of him because there were some really good quarterbacks there. He goes to LSU. He goes and wins a national championship. I don't know that I think Devin Brown's going to go do that within the next year or so somewhere else. I don't know if he's as good as Joe Burrow. I'm not going to put him on that. I'm not going to try to compare the two. But the situations are similar, and then I could see him going somewhere else, and Ohio State fans still supporting him because he just there was just not enough. There was not enough playing time. There was not enough. It was just too. He just ultimately, I think, won't end up being be the guy that gets chosen over the players that are on this roster right now and the players that they have planned to sort of take the reins of the quarterback position. I just don't know that it's ever going to be him, and so I can't. If that's what he ultimately decides, fine. And I think that Ohio State fans will support him. Conversely to how I think Ohio State fans feel about Kyle McCord, who just feel like he chickened out and didn't want to compete and said, if you can't guarantee it to me, I'm out of here. I'm going to go get NIL somewhere else. Devin Brown's obviously not doing that. But if it comes to that next year where he's like, I want to go compete somewhere else where I actually have a better chance to start, again, can't fault him for that. He's putting it out there on the record right now that he's not backing down from a challenge. And that, that if he ends up backing down from the challenge next year, I think that's fine. The other thing I'll say, though, to go back to the state of the program thing, I do think this goes a long way because you hear guys as transfers come in and new recruits come in, you hear them constantly talk about this development idea and the idea of being challenged and how that was something that intrigued them to Ohio State. And I think like Devin Brown being the latest to kind of say this, that he's not going to back down from a challenge. There's a lot of players here, but I'm not just going to roll over and die because everybody out there just keeps saying that I got no shot. That's not my DNA. I think it says a lot about this program right now in the NIL era that they've positioned themselves in a way where they can still get players through via the NIL stuff, of course, but that they also are still going to get players who want to be part of something great and who want to be pushed to be the best that they can be and try to excel at the next level. And you've heard that all the way on down. All the guys who have said they were coming back this year, Jack Sawyer, Travion Henderson, he talked this week about how he actually thought at one point he was going to be out of here. Like he thought he was destined to go play somewhere else. And then ultimately he kind of sat down and, had a conversation with God and some of his other teammates. And he's a very spiritual guy. So it makes sense that was kind of what he tapped into, but that he just felt like this was the path for him, was to come back and try to finish his legacy on a high note at Ohio State. And again, you hear these different stories, you hear these different perspectives. Even Marvin Harrison Jr., to an extent, did the Buckeyes a favor, talking about how it was going to be a difficult decision to go pro, even though we all knew he was going to go pro. That stuff, I think, goes a long way. And there's video this week of Marvin Harrison Jr. working with Jeremiah Smith on the jugs machine. And like, that's the type of stuff that I think speaks volumes and almost does the recruiting and the marketing for you when guys want to be around and they're not just shying away because they don't have the best NIL deal, or they're not just shying away because they're faced with some adversity because somebody's ahead of them on the depth chart that might be better than them. I don't know that there's a lot of programs that can operate at the level that Ohio State does like this. Alabama is one of them. Maybe they've lost a little bit of that without Nick Saban, because you always knew Nick Saban was going to get guys ready for the next level to the best of his ability, and he excelled at it. But I don't know, with him sort of stepping aside, there's only a handful of programs that can kind of operate in that stratosphere or in that world, that bubble, and Ohio State is 100% one of them. So I thought it was some interesting commentary from Devin Brown that he's not backing down from a challenge. Would you blame Devin Brown if at some point in the next year he ends up being the next Ohio State quarterback who finds himself in the transfer portal looking to find a starting job somewhere? Would you understand? You can jump in and comment in the on the 92 The Fan YouTube channel. You can hit me up, as always, on X at Spencito_, if you would like to comment on anything we talk about throughout the show, this latest episode of Sons of the Shoe. I do want to take a break, hear a quick word from our sponsors, but when we get back, Chip Kelly's talking about a collaborative effort. But what I want to know is, who's making the call when your back's against the wall and you need to play late in the fourth quarter against that team up north? We'll talk about it next on 92.3 or on Sons of the Shoe.